So I started going to the Mormon church. I was pregnant with my son, Dante. I was just learning and going and learning, and we worked and were saving money and stuff. And my boyfriend was like not super into the church. And it got to the point for me in my journey through the church that it was like no longer okay for me to continue to be a member and not be married and be pregnant and living with a guy. At the time, even though like things made sense to me and I felt the spirit at the church, I wasn't really at a place to commit to marriage, and I wasn't at a place to like leave my boyfriend and be like pregnant and having this baby and everything alone, because we were still good. We still loved each other. So I wasn't just gonna leave him just because, but I wasn't really sure if I wanted to marry him. So I chose to leave the church. We ended up moving out of our boss's and friend's house. We got our own place, and we started going to this other Christian church, this non-denominational, it was called the First Church of God. And they were really super sweet, and, I felt the spirit there, and it was a really small church. There was only about like 20 members. But, my curiosity carried over from the LDS church, and I had all these questions, and I would ask like the pastor and people at the church, as I would have questions, one of them being, was Jesus really born on Christmas? And like the pastor of 40 years didn't know the answer. And that really upset me. I'm just like, how can you be a pastor for 40 years and you don't know the answer to this very simple question, And so, and then, some of the members I became friends with, and I'd ask them questions, and their response was, after going to this same church, living across the street for 20 years, their response was, oh, so-and-so's the Bible guru, not me. And so, that frustrated me. And this is a problem with a lot of Christian churches, and why I don't go to a Christian church is because they go because that's what they've always done, or they just feel like that's what they're supposed to do. But it means absolutely nothing to them. A lot of them are still very much living in sin. They're not even trying not to live in sin. Still drinking, smoking, doing everything. Sure, they might be married. Sure, they might have the picture perfect family, but they don't love God enough to like obey and follow things the way God instructs us to do. And so all of this was like super frustrating for me. These people were really sweet. I ended up going there until I gave birth to Dante, I believe. And they threw a baby shower for me. They were very sweet. And it was a good experience, but it wasn't the same. And so my boyfriend, he had an older son who lived in LA. And in April of 2014, his son was shot. And it was really traumatic for everybody. He did not live. And Donnie, even though I quit drinking and got sober, my ex did not. And when he found this information out, I'm not holding it against him because it's, it's tragic and a shock. And like, you got to just kind of deal with it however you can. And he started drinking really bad, and he ended up blaming me for his death. His son came to stay with us for a few months, and him and I were fighting about money and different things. And so his son decided to leave, and he blames me because, he says, if I hadn't made a big deal over the money, then he would have never left. These things would have never happened. However, like literally was unable to pay the rent. So, and he wasn't helping me pay the rent. And so I'm not sure how things would have been better if we were homeless, but whatever. His logic is obviously not my logic, and that's why we're not together. So I got really drunk. He threw something at me. He was really mean. And I had a 4-month-old baby. I still had my daughter there with me. I had been growing closer and closer to God, regardless of what church I was going to. In my personal time, I spent it reading the Bible, watching documentaries, listening to gospel music, and I was really close to God. And when all this happened, I got on my knees and I prayed. God, I don't know what to do. And I felt this fountain of energy shoot up through me, and it was the strongest I'd ever felt the Spirit. I was already depressed and unhappy in the relationship and in the situation. I left the Mormon church to please him. Every time we went to 3 different churches in our relationship.